Ladies and gentlemen, the boys are back. Weighing in, Grant Turner, Mark Ostrander. I'm David Mirikitani. Brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Mark, good to see you. GT back from the world where you correctly predicted what happened. Putting out awesome tweets about awesome food, great pictures with all of your athletes. Saw In Shane over there a little bit too. Let's just start with you and me. All three of us are friends, so we talk. So I know you don't take this for granted, but how amazing is it to be literally a part of what happened and to be there as it happened?
Well, like it's been kind of like since Nike has taken over the sponsorship of USA Wrestling and its official outfitting of the national team in 2017 was probably one of the greatest, like should be put into a movie type atmospheres where it was like, hey, the team tournament comes down to Schneider and Sajalayev, two Olympic champions going back, like basically going toe to toe 1 year after the Olympics, comes down to that final match. And then that was just like an unreal historic feeling, right? And then you get to 2022 and it's like the guys all look tremendous. I mean, everybody wrestled outside of their minds. They wrestled so great. Taylor just basically dismantled Yazdani in a way that, basically almost the entire world didn't think that was possible, because Yazdani Charati is just one of the best wrestlers on the planet. And David made him look not even remotely in the same atmosphere as him. So being there, seeing all of that work and stuff pay off for the donors, the boosters, the CEOs, the presidents, the people like Andy Barth, Barry, Rich Travasso, like the guys that basically fund and help these teams do it. It's such a good recognition of all of those efforts, and being there in person, you get to see that joy and recognition and fulfillment of what they put themselves in position to do. So it's cool to be there in person. It's amazing to see the tight-knit community that these guys have and this team has. So it was really cool to be a part of.
And you mentioned the Andy Barth, and I think that's great to literally Andy Barth and Art Martori, two people that do more for wrestling for people that don't think about wrestling. Like, I mean, Art Martori basically saved wrestling 10 years ago in the Olympics. So it's unbelievable to watch. I got a chance to talk to Gary Abbott, who we all have a tremendous, I mean, he's the GOAT, right? I mean, Gary's the GOAT, and has been an unbelievable mentor to Mark and I on this side of it, doing, the interviews at nationals and then the pods and, at the Rudis event and those kind of things. But I had to ask him, I'm like, Gary, what do you, what's your perspective on this? And he goes, the quad, the 92 to 96 quad was really comparable. He goes, but it's the only one that's comparable. He goes, and it's that argument. It's kind of like, was John Smith the GOAT or is Jordan the GOAT? And those are, it's like sort of the Tom Brady, Joe Montana kind of stuff. But the fact that this, and I know we're talking about men's, we're going to touch base on the women's team as they finished up from last week. But 8 in the finals, Zilmer actually wrestled great and took 7th, and kind of got shockingly didn't get to wrestle for bronze. Petrashvili got upset. Seth Gross wrestled great, just ran into a buzzsaw. Is unbelievable. So we'll kind of go through this just by weight, make sure we hit on everything we want to hit on. So Allure, 18 years old, wins the world title. I think she's the youngest American to ever win a world title. Men's freestyle, Greco-Roman, women's freestyle. And just a side note, because I was mentioning her to the guys I coach in jiu-jitsu, and they go, her boyfriend is Mickey Galvao, who just took 2nd at the ADCC World Championships in Vegas. So that's probably the wrong couple to mess with walking down the street. One person's going to double leg you and one person's going to choke you out. So, GT, what strikes me about her is just her poise at her level. I mean, obviously skill, but 18-year-olds in general are kind of a hot mess, and she's like the opposite of that. Like, what was it like to watch her compete, and what are some of the maybe subtleties that you picked up about her that make her so great?
I mean, she's been great for a long time. I mean, if you look at her track record and
Right.
Her presence at juniors, basically juniors, cadets, now at the senior level, making her first team, it's kind of that been there, done that on each stage as she's progressed in her career. And then basically, I think at the after party, where they congratulated the entire team, they were like, "Hey, Amit, are you going to be wrestling in Spain for the U23 World Championship?" She's like, "Yeah, set it up, let's go." So she's like, it's just one of those things where she's on to the next, right? So she loves competing. She loves being in that mode of working and striving for a title. So, yeah, it's really cool to see from a very young athlete that is at, world championship level already.
Mark, when I was talking to Gary Abbott, he was talking about like the Trish Saunders of the world, the people that were the pioneers, especially on women's wrestling. And no disrespect to any of the women now, but it's a better setup for them to succeed than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whenever that was. What's it like to see stuff kind of come full circle and see like somebody like that who's 18? Most of the time, if we saw an 18-year-old winning a U23, we'd be like, holy cow. She just went and did the whole dang thing. Just kind of jumped a couple levels on us. So what's that look like to you?
Yeah, I don't ever remember, as long as I've been alive, anybody that won the juniors turned around and won seniors in the same year. And I could be wrong, but I have no idea who it would be if it's ever happened. And as dominant as she was, David, I would be scared to be a woman wrestler at that weight for the next 10 years, because this young lady is not going anywhere. She is an absolute beast. She represented the United States with such class. It was just a treat to watch her, David.
Yeah. She's at 72, right, GT?
Yes.
So the Olympic weights are 68 and 76. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I got these right.
That's
so
correct.
She'll have to go up or down. She'll have to either go down to the Mensa stock weight class or go up to the Adeline Gray weight class. And that's the other thing to talk about in America. Diamond Guilford, obviously, first time there, making the team is amazing. But the women's team would have probably scored more points if Adeline Gray hadn't, had twins. So, she medals. Like, if she doesn't medal, it's a shock. So that's probably a minimum. Like, if she wrestles poorly, probably another 15 points. So just to kind of put a capper on the women's side of things, Japan first, America second. And I think I looked up the math. I think Japan and America outscored the 3rd through 9th place teams combined. So in the next week or two, we're going to be getting into college rankings. And there's always this thing about tiers, and it's like Japan's on a tier. USA's, they're nipping at their heels, but they haven't beat them yet. But they're clearly above the rest of the world. And GT, your perspective on the CEOs, the donors, all the people that donate to USA Wrestling. I'm a very hesitant person when people say we about stuff they're not actively involved in. Like, I'll use here in St. Louis, people talk about the Cardinals and say we. Like, I didn't see you in the dugout. But, USA, Grant, Grandview winning all those things. Mark, Iowa Central, us at Merrimack, a lot of we's that maybe weren't so involved. But at USA Wrestling, it is a grassroots organization. I was literally pulling up their mission statement yesterday for one of the reads we're doing at Border Brawl. And it's all the people that donate $10, $50, $100, $1,000. That's all going into this so that these people can, even just setting up an acclimation camp costs money. Being able to travel early costs money. All these different things they're doing. So it's amazing. So women's, you're just going to put a cap on it, but and then we're going to U23s and everything else next. By the way, Grant, I don't know I'm sure you didn't get to watch the pod last week, but you were greatly missed. You're a huge addition to the pod, period. But these weeks, especially so, Mark and I talked about it off the air. You're the MVP during these international world championship, whatever, senior, whatever level. So we were happy that you were there and a little sad that you couldn't join us from Serbia. But all right, so let's just go through the men. We'll just go through it, big picture, and then by weight. 8 in the finals, 4 gold, 4 silver, a 5th, and a 7th. We'll just go through it by weight class. Gilman, 57 kilos, Olympic weight, because I'm going to try to set it up for going forward. Takes second, loses in the finals in a match that wasn't that close. Jason Keck was actually over there. He's friends with Thomas and Pat, and said that guy was gigantic. Is that kind of how you saw it, GT? Like, with that day before weigh-in and all that stuff?
On which athlete?
The finalist,
Bakarov from
Yeah.
Albania.
Yeah.
History maker for that guy. First ever, I think it was like first ever world medal for Albania.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to say in the world of the transfer era in international wrestling.
The portal.
Yeah. The nationality portal.
Let's make that a thing. Hashtag nationality portal.
Not a chance. But I did see it, on social media, a couple of posts from basically like a wrestling club in Russia. Basically said, basically here's the people that have come from my club within Russia that have now gone to different entities across the world. And Bakarov was one of those athletes. Monster. Just went through the tournament like just a beast. He beat everybody on his way to, basically knocking off Thomas Gilman, and did it in a manner that like just haven't seen Thomas have a match like that in a while. But
he looked like he was going to get tired for a little bit, Mark, and then like he caught his breath and then kind of exploded on Thomas. He did a really good job of fighting the hard hand fight. That's where Gilman gets guys tired. Like Gilman's kind of willing to lose, scoring a lot of points early to wear you down and score late, and he just wasn't able to wear him down like that.
Yeah, really, he wasn't even able to get in on him, David. He didn't really have, he got to his seatbelt maybe once, got to his underhook early, got arm tossed. I think made him rethink what he wanted to do out there. And you saw some glimpses of the old Gilman back in his day where he just wasn't sure how to score and how to make, get an opening. So that was a little disheartening, but overall, he's silver in the worlds again. He's been a champ. He's been a silver. He's been a silver, Olympic bronze.
Yeah, 4 medals, 4 senior level medals from a guy that shockingly didn't win an NCAA title. Jump levels, it feels like, got healthy. We were lucky enough to have him on the pod a couple times. He mentioned like he couldn't shoot for a couple years. And also, as we mentioned this, and I'm bad at this, like I'm always thinking ahead in my life. Sometimes I just don't appreciate the moment enough, but he now sits in Final X for next year at the Olympic weight. Okay, which is the weight of Spencer Lee, which is the weight of Nick Suriano, which is the weight of Dayton Fix. So all those guys have to go through each other to get to him. So, okay, Seth Gross makes the semis, loses to Higuchi. Higuchi, by the way, is one of my favorite wrestlers to watch, period. But, man, what a beast. Had a great tournament. Loses for 3rd, takes 5th. So he would be the number 1 seed next year, first senior level world team. And there's been years where like his taking 5th would be the highlight of what we would be talking about. He's now the 9th best guy in this team. Mark can go ahead and go first. His style's a little unique. He's probably a weird feel for these guys the first time. It feels to me like he's got to get a little better at getting to his own offense and then creating the scrambles he wants besides that 2-on-1. You've coached a long time. Is that how you see it? And what do you think of his performance?
Yeah, I just think he ran into better wrestlers toward the end of the tournament. I thought he wrestled a phenomenal tournament just to get into the semis, because I would imagine the 3 of us sitting here would have had a hard time predicting right off the get-go he was going to be in the semis, of the world. So,
just to interrupt real quick, in Coralville, the first round, he was losing 9 points to Jesse Mendez. Yeah. So, a story of perseverance. Go ahead.
I couldn't be happier for him.
Yeah.
But you can tell that this was, and he didn't look like it was his first international experience, David, when he started out this tournament. But at the end, it kind of looked like he was not where he needed to be. So I think he's going to learn from that. I think we're going to see him for a while at 61.
Well, only for a year. He's already said he's going up to 65.
Yeah, but I mean, but I think this is where he's going to wrestle in the next four years, or, the next quad after the 24. I think he'll still be around. I think he's going to probably be at this weight. I don't think he's going to get big enough to be 65. I think this is what he likes, this weight class. So I
think if he's trying to make the team, he's going to literally go up and go up. But he's going to be here probably next year. But yeah.
So
yeah,
I just think he got, the third and fourth, the semis. I thought he wrestled really hard. I think he had opportunities, but for the bronze, David, he just didn't have any answers for that young man. He pretty much had watched video on him and had a game plan going in, and he dismantled him in the bronze match.
Yeah. GT, thoughts on Gross first time? Awesome dude, obviously.
Well, I think out of basically all of the athletes, I think Zilmer and Gross had probably the most pressure, quote unquote, on them to perform, basically kind of taking out, Gwizdowski and Fix in the trials process, both being, world medalists, and being, somebody that's been on the scene for a long time. Gross did end up beating Suleiman Atli from Turkey, who's been a mainstay for the Turkish wrestling team for a long time in the quarters. So I think it was a great run by Gross. I think he wrestled kind of his own style that way. To Mark's point, I think, maybe getting to his offense maybe a little bit differently, could have helped him in the longevity of it. But yeah, also to Mark's point, in that bronze medal match, I don't think he had he kind of just got behind and then just could not find the handle, right? So
sometimes you just wrestle guys that are better than you or better than you that day. I mean, and if you run into that in the bronze medal match of the world championships, it's not really anything to be ashamed of. You watch the film, you make improvement. Film, I'm old. You watch the video, you get better. And I mean, that's okay, right? I mean, I saw the smirk about the film over there, GT.
Hey, I mean, if you guys want to get together and watch some reel-to-reel films, that'd be great, guys.
I'm sending the 8mm, man. The right. Betamax is coming.
We'll hang the bed sheet up in the living room, and we'll just have everybody over. It'll be cool.
All right. So he will be the #1 seed of the U.S. Open next year. So just so people understand that. So if and I assume Dayton would probably go down, but so anyway, so John Diakomahalis breaks the streak of basically the Bill Zadek blessing / curse of the 66, 65, whatever, those weight classes were, makes the finals. So wrestled really well. Kind of an interesting draw, though, right? It seemed like a lot of the guys, the hammers were on the top. I mean, he dismantled Bajrang. And I think, GT, you have a relationship with Bajrang. Am I wrong, or is that correct?
No, Bajrang is a Nike signed athlete. Yeah. So he's definitely one of my guys.
You know him. It's not like you just send him shoes. You know him. How surprising was that to you? Let's just start with that.
Well, I think, Yanni and Bajrang wrestled at the Beat the Streets match. I believe it was in New York. But I think, I think even saw a press conference from Yanni that, basically he thought this was the best tournament he's ever wrestled in his career. Just felt the best. His technique and timing felt great. And, once again, Bajrang is one of the favorites in the world, kind of at that 65 kilo weight class. He's always kind of in the mix, always has a shot to be there. I definitely think that Yanni went out and kind of took it to him and got up to a lead where Bajrang had to kind of come and get him a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, for Yanni, what a performance. Just for him, regardless of the weight class and all of the different, statistical lines on not having a medal there for a very long time, he looked so good, just looked great from start to finish, the entire tournament basically. So
He was another guy that had a lot of pressure on him, like you were saying, GT, because, he was not, he was a first-time senior world team member, obviously age group medalist, but hadn't, we haven't placed there forever. So, Mark, you and I had talked about it last week. We thought if he could make the semis and Sebastian Rivera made it, like that was about the best draw he could get, and clearly it was. He just what's it, 10 rip? Is that how we say it, GT now? 10
Yep.
rip? He 10 ripped him in under a minute. So he now sits in Final X. Yanni does. So, Mark, I mean, obviously you and I are big Yanni fans. We get to see a lot of his matches up close, being on the floor of NCAAs. I feel like if it's possible, he just jumped another level, and he's going to obviously have a lot of pressure on him next year, trying to win his 4th NCAA title. Clearly a huge favorite, but that pressure can kind of grind on you. But if you feel like mentally you've separated yourself even more, that feels like it's a big boost for him, right?
Oh yeah, I watched a lot of his matches. The first match he wrestled in the whole tournament, somebody that beat him out, knocked him out of the world the year before, and he gets a call on it. He got chest wrapped, does the splits. The guy takes him over. Looks like 2. They call a choke on it. I've never seen a choke called on a chest wrap before, Grant. I don't know if you have, because you're not actually around the neck. So that kind of surprised me. But then he turns around in the finals. And so give him, kudos. He got a call. And the Americans don't always get calls at the world international level. But in the finals, I would have scored it different in that big exchange they had in the first period. I think Yanni, basically they left 2 points on the board that Yanni never got. That's just my opinion.
No, I'm yelling at the monitor. I'm like, they should have re-challenged. Like, yeah. GT, is that how you saw it? Because you're there, like in the moment and in the building. Like,
I mean, it was tight. I mean, when you're sitting there watching it live, I'm like, good gravy. All right, take 5 minutes and try to score this bunch of manure.
Yeah,
because you could have, like, once again, as you're talking about it, and I'm sure that you guys and everybody that's listening and watching our pod has an opinion of how they would have scored that, right? Yeah. And it could have gone, 8 rip Yanni. Could have been like, whatever it is, 6-4. Could have been 6-4 the other way. Could have just been like, hey, white paddle the whole thing. It's just like, it was amazing. And once again, I think Antonio, the guy that does the booth review challenges for the UWW, he does a very good job, in my opinion, of basically stating out in regular terms how things have happened while the video is showing it. So red, blue action. Red takes shot, scores 2 in the first exchange, then rolls through 4 for blue during this exchange. After that leg attack, red goes for exposure. That's 2 red, and basically walks you through the entire thing. Now, once again, you may not agree with how they're determining the point structure based off of either fan status or just, hey, I wouldn't have scored it that way. But at least there's a method to it as they walk you through the point structure. Now, once again, I thought the scoring would have been maybe a little bit different. I wouldn't have necessarily had the 4 in the middle, because it went like 2, 4, 2. I think, and then there was another 2 after the fact for a turn or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly.
No, there was a 4 in the middle that, yeah.
But once again, as you look at it, they're both up off their feet. Absolutely, it was a 4. But like, as you slow it down, it's hard to do it in real time. But
there's 2 things I'd like to say that on what you said. Number one is what you said about, I think you said the guy's name is Antonio. Whoever that guy is who's doing that, God bless him and God bless UWW, because the point you made, look, you can disagree, right? But like, you're still coaching. Mark and I watch a ton. We're still doing play-by-play. Like, one of the craziest things when you're doing play-by-play is like they just change the call and you don't know why, like in folk style or freestyle. And like, it's not a good way to grow the sport. Forget kind of like us nerds. Like, if you're trying to explain it to your wife or your girlfriend or your buddy, it's difficult. So at least now, like, if you go, they said this, I thought it was this, but they said this, and that's why the points are the way they are. That's super helpful in growing the sport. So I think that's a really positive thing in terms of helping people understand the wrestling. The other thing is this, and I just want people to maybe be a little less myopic. Like I have people calling me and they're like, man, this freestyle stuff's a mess. You can't get it figured out. Like it's not any more of a mess than folk style. Like it's just, we're used to folk style. But, like if you look at some of the rules, like there's no more reaction time now. And, you're in the cylinder. And if your toe's floating above the line, you're still in. Like that. There's stuff that's just as crazy. We're used to that crazy. So people need to open their minds. UWW's done a ton of things to make it better, put the dot on who's winning. And as somebody that did this for track a couple years ago, the stream was great. So shout out to Flo for doing a great job. Yanni sits in Final X. Zane, I got to keep it moving because I'm talking too long. Zane makes the finals at 70, his first world medal, non-Olympic weight, started sort of the Nittany Lion Express that we're going to get to up here in a minute, where they're just racking up medals. I guess Gilman's really the start. He now would be the number 1 seed at the U.S. Open if he drops down to 65 next year to try to make the team, or he can stay up and then, it's lather, rinse, repeat if he medals or not. So, Mark, let me just say this. We had Zane in for a clinic a couple years ago with Marcus Hayne. Could not be a nicer human being. Like, sort of zero level of arrogance, which you always wonder about some of these guys. You just wonder when you win a lot of stuff, what kind of human being are you? So just on a personal note, I was really happy to see him do so well. It also shows we have depth because Jordan Oliver was right there with him. And it shows like there's a couple different people that could probably medal for us at the senior level, which is like the best. That's the epitome of, as GT and I like to say, first world problems. So Mark, what do you think of Zane's performance?
Yeah, I thought basically everything that everybody has been waiting to see, he showed this week. So this last week, that was the Zane everybody had been waiting to see. He went out and performed. He looked happy at that weight.
Yeah.
And he went out and performed. I thought he looked a little undersized for some of the matches, but he's just so strong and he has that tenacity to go after and get what he wants, which was really cool to see. You're right. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He deserves this. He deserves to be a world medalist. He's put in a lot of time. So I don't think you're going to see Zane moving except for maybe the year of the Olympics. I think this is the weight he's comfortable at, David. Well, and I don't know. I think he struggles going down. And I don't think he's big enough to go up. He's going to be.
No, he's not big enough.
Kind of like Green.
He can't wrestle taking Jordan Burroughs. Like, I mean, you have to think about it realistically, right? Yeah. So, and we talk about this every year. These guys that go up and down, like Joe Colon going down to 57, like Seth Gross going down to 57, like James Green trying to go down to 65. Like we had him on the pod, and obviously JG and GT are real friends, and talking about what that did to his body and these trial weigh-in processes and everything else. And some people are just a certain size, even at lean body fat, and it's unfortunate for them. Their natural size does not match up to an Olympic weight. So we'll keep it moving. 74, Dake wins. Dake wins the way Dake wins. He scores when he needs to score. Super stingy. I liked his interview afterwards where he talked about little adjustments like where I place my hands and things like that. Also, a huge plus minus that happened. Well, first of all, I think Dake's now a 4-time world champion. So that's amazing. And this one's at the Olympic weight, which again puts him in Final X. I think Burroughs, if I had to guess, will stay up at 79 for 23, and he'll be in Final X there. But I'll combine these. He announces he's going to Nittany Lion. Huge get for them. Huge, shot to Cornell. That's him and Yanni are their two best guys. So, like, GT, just your thoughts on Dake winning and the move to Nittany Lion.
I think Dake, once again, Dake is now 4-time world champion. Unreal. I mean, just the accomplishment that he's had. Once again, not being the guy I tried to beat out Jaden Cox at 86, goes back down to 74, basically tries to beat out JB, then does beat out JB, basically like made the most of his situation and is stuck with his craft and continues to develop and be on top of his game. The 74 kilo weight class at the World Championships was extremely large bracket with tons of talent inside of it. So it's just a credit to him. And then if JB does what JB does, we could have an entire podcast just on him, which would be really cool to do at some point in time. But like, what he does and what he's been doing is what you expect from Kyle Dake. Like, he's proven to be that level of caliber. So with him going to Nittany Lion, the rich get richer. It's like, hey, everybody wants to go play with Tom Brady. Everybody wants to be a part of Nittany Lion right now. They've had so much success internationally. They're putting guys on world teams in other countries, even in the US. They have the ability to, train well, and those guys have a great system. Kudos to, Jake Varner and Kale and Cody and Casey and everybody that's involved over there. But I know that Dake's relationship with David is extremely close and has been since they've been little kids. So, go a chance to wrestle with your buddy and continue to win world titles. Pretty dang cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the part maybe people don't think about, because like Dake moved up his senior year to beat Taylor, and to get his 4th title, and Taylor's like an aspirin, like one of the best ever to win 2, and not 3 or 4. I don't want to say the word only 2, because that should not come out of my mouth, but where he could have been, he got beat by Bubba and lost to Dake. Yeah, it'll be interesting, because I feel like Nittany Lion does a good job with these guys in opening them up a little more, like being a little freer with their offense. I mean, I think we've seen that with Gilman, and if Dake opens up a little more, that's going to be terrifying, because like right now he's sort of we used to call these guys close masters. They win all the close matches, but that's a dangerous game to play if you can open it up and give yourself a one more takedown, a one more step out, a one more caution and one kind of thing. I think his margin of error becomes even better. So again, he sits at 74, which is an Olympic weight. JB, the new king, 7 world and Olympic gold medals. Just, I don't, anybody that wants to debate about who's, the better person or better wrestler, that's for another day. I don't even know exactly what I was going to talk about it. And then I'm like, there's no way we're going to mix that into whatever else we have going on. 7 is 7, Olympic weight, non-Olympic weight, just the longevity. And I think if you look at the people that JB has kept off the team, like how many medals would Dake have if JB wasn't around, as an example? It's kind of like Tyler Caldwell, had to wrestle all these guys, was never a national champion and was an unbelievable kind of guy. So Mark is the historian of our show. What do you think about just the perspective of JB, 7 gold, 10 medals, the whole thing?
I don't even know how to put it in words. We're probably not. Here's the thing. You want to say you're probably never going to see this again out of a wrestler in America. But this whole damn team, David, you could see it again and again and again.
No, we're going to get to a guy that's on that path.
I know that. But there could be more than one. I mean, if Dake wants to stick around for another quad, David, after this upcoming, he could be up there. And the same thing with David Taylor. I mean, we're just not talking about one guy. I'm talking about, you look at this whole team and what they've accomplished, the longevity of it, it's second to none. I mean, Russia is as good as Russia is in wrestling, in men's freestyle. And, you got to give them credit. Maybe they didn't do it the right way. I know they didn't do it the right way. I know they've been, banned over and over again for certain things, but they don't even have this kind of longevity. You never see a Russian team with this many world champions and Olympic champions sticking together, because every 3 years you get a new guy from Russia that takes somebody out and you're just trying to learn who he is. That's how much depth they have there, where this team is actually stuck together. the number of world titles on this team alone is phenomenal. So, but I think, JB is the one that brought this all together. He's been there so long. He's done so much for America and for the sport of freestyle for this country. People are just jumping on the bandwagon and saying, I'm going to do it the way Jordan does it. And look at the success we've had. I don't know if you agree with that, David or Grant, but that's just how I see it.
Grant, you get to see him interact with people probably more than 99% of us. Obviously you're not Mark Manning, but and it was cool to see Mark Manning there, as a part of that. A couple years ago, I got to do a pod with Mark and JB together, and it was very cool to watch their faces as one talked about the other on camera. I don't think they have necessarily a captain of the team because these guys are from all over, but I think he's definitely the unspoken leader, and it'd be hard not to be with those qualifications. He's a guy that clearly understands legacy and things like that. Sometimes that can be to your detriment, but he understands history, and I think he understands the importance of being a good role model. Is that when you see that in action, I'm guessing, right, Grant?
Yeah, Jordan had an ability to give a speech, kind of after the team was done, and they talked about that. They talked about how, I think it was in 2011 or 2010, they went over, they had 0 medals or something, and then there was only 2 medals out of the entire freestyle team in 2011, which was I think Jake and JB.
Yes.
So. Basically he mentioned, and once again, I'm paraphrasing kind of the speech just because I don't remember it in its entirety, but it was something along the lines of forced into this leadership role of USA Wrestling because he has been around for so long, and that he's been there, done that, and been able to guide a lot of these kids and take on a leadership role, which, once again, he credited to, because it's such a selfish sport, becoming a husband and a father, and it's having to put others before himself too, while still being selfish about his training and trying to be on top of his game. And just the amount of faith that he has that what he's doing is the betterment of USA Wrestling and being the face of USA Wrestling for over 12 years to the world and to the domestic populace, right? So it's for him. He wanted this one real bad. He had mentioned that, it's hey, I thought, this goal's been mine for a very long time to be one of the great, if not the greatest of all time. And now he's achieved what that basically entails when it comes to
basically the numbers for sure.
He's hit it, right? And then, once again, we can also have another podcast on just all of the stat lines that Gary put out in that article, which I would encourage everybody to read because it's history.
Yeah. So it's themath.com. Just go there and then I'll let you check out the record set extended or tied by the amazing 2022 U.S. Senior World Teams in Belgrade, Serbia. Go ahead. That's the article.
Yeah, it's just you put some of that stuff in perspective, and as we get down into the other weight classes, of course, with Taylor and Snyder and Jaden, there's stat lines there if you're a stat guy to look at and be oh my gosh, how historic of a run is this team, and this quad represents that 92 to 96 window. But it does, and once again, not to say anything, let's say maybe controversial, but it's it does give you some of that 1984 feel if people can read between the lines a little bit there. So
no, it was a boycott year in 84 for sure. We had a bunch of people in 84 that won Olympic gold medals that had never placed at a world championship before or after. There's some massive exceptions like the Dave Schultzes of the world, the Mark Schultzes of the world. And listen, if you make the world team, you can't help who shows up. You make the Olympic team, you can't help who shows up. So we're no disrespect. But again, if not everybody shows up, it's a little bit easier to win. I put a post out best, men's freestyle best team in the world. And somebody said, well, I think Russia might have something to do with it. And, people sometimes they just got to get their 2 cents in. Nobody's saying that they're not, they weren't there. Okay. And I know for a fact, having talked to 3 or 4 of the guys on the team, they wanted them there. It doesn't mean they would have won, but it's not like they were upset. They were upset they weren't there as opposed to the other way. Okay. So JB sits at 79 as in Final X. I cannot imagine he'd go down in 23. but if he does, he'd be the number 1 seed. David Taylor, we touched on it, just murdered everyone. I don't even know what to say. Like, there's another guy that didn't make the world team for a long time because of the Dakes and the Burrows and the Jadens of the world. They all moved out. He moved up to an Olympic weight, and everyone kind of moved up or down or stayed. And, now probably the single most impressively shocking match to me. Not that he beat Yazdani, but that it wasn't close. So, GT, you mentioned it. So anything you want to add to that, or you feel good about just it was just a dismantling, like you said?
Well, I think the one thing I think Mark would agree, I'll let Mark kind of have a little bit of shine on this, is that like David determined his tactics against Yazdani and like knew kind of how he wanted to take his technique to a different level as to what Yazdani was doing to him. So, I mean, credit to David more so maybe than the coaching staff, because David was like, hey, I'm training for this specifically. And basically his game plan worked masterfully. Because if you watch Yazdani, he has very similar tactics in almost all of his matches, and he's one of the best in the world at what he does. And David just basically took it away from him.
Marco?
Grant, you're 100% correct on what you just said. I think Kyle Dake has a little bit to say about that, because I think him and David really ping pong ideas off and what to do, because this is really what Dake was really good at and is really good at, is breaking down what he needs to do into certain areas and how do you defeat somebody that gives you problems in these areas. And he had to do that to beat Jordan, obviously. And I think he probably helped David with that. This is just my opinion, David and Grant, and you guys have your own opinion, but I'm going to say it. David Taylor, pound for pound, best wrestler in America at this moment. Pound for pound. And I know JB's got all the credentials and everything. This one tournament, he was pound for pound the best guy in the world. And
for the tournament, just overall,
I don't care. United States, world, whatever. The way he performed this weekend, he went out and demolished that field. And obvious, if you look at it, Jan, the guy he beat in the final, like I'm terrible at pronouncing names, Yazzie, he dismantled him. I mean, he took the match completely out of his hands and did what he wanted to do. And you don't see that in this level of competition very often. And it was such a treat to watch.
Yeah. Yazdani Charati, just so you know.
Yazdani, yes.
First name Tony.
I mean, I don't say it all the time, David.
We're coming into the college season. We're back to first name Tony.
I'm ready for David and Joe and all those guys. Yeah.
Sammy Sasso, those kind of things, screaming about the number 1 seed. Okay. Jaden takes second. We all know Jaden. I actually know Jaden fairly well. So I'm just going to say this first and get out of the way. I'm not the only person that thinks this, put it on social. It was actually encouraging to see him wrestle in the finals. Even though he didn't win, he took a lot more attacks. And when he does a lot more attacks, like, he's really scary. The other thing is, and I can't remember if it was the quarters or the semis, but this guy shot on a high crouch and almost got behind him. And Jaden just did a little hip whip to him on his back, like he was taking out the trash. Like, that's how casual it was. Just looked at him and then ended up winning like 7-0 instead of 5-0. The other news there is Jaden says he's going up to 97 immediately. So that's interesting on a couple levels. Nate Jackson probably becomes, and I would guess Colin Moore would come down, because Colin Moore's had good success against Nate. But those two probably become the leaders in the clubhouse to represent us at 92. And Jaden would be the number 1 seed in the U.S. Open with Snyder sitting in Final X. So Jaden's a Nike athlete. So GT, I know you actually, like myself, have a real relationship with him. What'd you think?
I think Jaden looked extremely good. He wrestled a great match against Gasimpour. Once again, great. I mean, that's becoming an amazing rivalry between those two guys. Gaspar and him have a great relationship in general. You could see that like the moment of the tournament in the United World Wrestling manner, basically just once again, sports brings us all together. Jaden, once again, the classiest of classy men and athlete, just exemplifies that on every level. I think everybody in the world would agree with that statement just because of how Jaden is and what he represents. With him going up to 97, that's always been kind of his, once again, was trying to do that for the Olympics going into Tokyo. Once again, wanted to go back down to 92. He did that past 2 years. Now, once again, going back into the 2023, the year prior to the Olympic Games, get back up to fighting weight at 97 kilograms. So wrestled a way better match in the finals than he did the year prior. So kudos to Jaden on that.
And I think all of us have coached, and I think sometimes that's people don't get it. Some people are like, okay, if you won, you wrestled well, and if you lost, you wrestled poorly, and that's definitely not the case. You can wrestle really well and the guy beats you or sneaks you or catches you, and you can win and look like freeze-dried garbage. So plus we're literally now Jaden took second in the world and we're trying to act like something went wrong. So I mean, let's keep that in perspective too. So we'll jump to 97. So Snyder, we've talked about it, just complete dismantling of the field. The social media stuff, which I think GT is on more than Mark, like Sajjalaya was like, congratulations, but I'm coming for you. And then Snyder posted the Tombstone Doc Holliday character, I'm ready. That kind of, when and where, let's go, that kind of thing. So I would argue, Mark, I'm not saying I disagree with Taylor as your pick for OW of the tournament overall. Snyder's right up there with him. I would say, like, if it's 1A, 1B, like Snyder's like one of those guys, exactly what he's going to do to you, and you just can't stop it. And he also looks tired all the time, which is terrifying because he's not tired, which means you just have to think about how hard the other guy has to be breathing. So what are your thoughts on him?
I was so happy for the way Schneider wrestled in this tournament. You run out of words to use when you start talking about these guys because they just keep doing it over and over and over again. Jaden, like you guys had talked earlier, right before we started going into Kyle, probably one of the nicest guys that I've met on the wrestling side by just sitting and visiting with him. Has great respect for his opponents, for his friends that he has to wrestle with. Does not make excuses when things don't go the right way for him. Just puts his head down and starts working again to get better and better. And this, I thought, was one of his best tournaments I've ever seen him wrestle in, even though he didn't win it. But Schneider, there you go. I mean, he's going to be one of those guys where his name's going to be etched right in there with Jordan Burroughs, with about four other guys right now.
He's ahead of, at this stage in your career, like age-wise, he's way ahead of Taylor, way ahead of Dake. He's ahead of Jaden in gold medals, like in overall medals, because he made the team when he was 19, I think. And he beat, there's the thing people forget, he beat Varner, who was the defending Olympic champion. And it's also really cool now to see Varner coaching Snyder. I think people, you forget about that, right? Like at one point that's a rivalry. Now they're working out together. Like I would pay good money just to watch practice there. Like all those guys working out. Like I wouldn't care if they're going live. Like I'd almost like to watch the play wrestling more, just the scrambles those guys get in, because the IQ there is just out of this world. So Zilmer takes 7th. I'm going to spend a lot of time on him. Get a touch on one last thing. Beat a guy that he lost to Petrusvili, right? GT. Yep. And then Petrusvili got upset in the semis, which didn't allow him to come back, because at the time when it was going on, me and Mark were talking like on the phone. I'm like, well, this is what we thought. He had to get to Petrusvili. He'd probably lose. He'll have to wrestle one more match for 3rd, and then he didn't get through, so he takes 7th. And so now he would just be the number 1 seed, and would be very interesting. I don't know if they would do a special criteria, but if Gable were to wrestle, because it seems like the WWE thing may not happen, they'd have teammates in the finals, and I think like Brandon Magum and Steiner and Luke Becker would probably just sit right behind the head table and say nothing and throw a towel to each of them in between periods. So yeah, we've all had that. Grandview sometimes has guys wrestling in the national finals. So, you're familiar with that move. So last thing, and I just want to take a quick second. Missouri Border Brawl is this Saturday. We're recording this on the 22nd. It's on the 24th. Gary will probably post this on the 23rd. So it'll be tomorrow when you see this. Want to thank all the sponsors. Really want to thank Nike, GT. Uniforms super clean, super crispy. Came in early. God bless DHL. God bless the supply chain this time. It's going to be really successful. We've sold our VIP tables out. Have some awesome matches. We got Fargo champs. When the kids have, we got Tulsa champs. A gazillion state titles. Boys matches, girls matches, kid matches, Pan Am team members. So very excited and blessed to be able to do that part of my life. And just want to thank you guys both, because Mark, I bug you all the time about ideas, and GT, the relationship with Nike has been one that's been incredibly beneficial, and also helped us with other sponsorships when we can say Nike sponsors us. So I want to just thank you guys both publicly. All right. So next week, we'll be talking about first name Mark, talking about 125-pound, which kind of works out good. We got about 5-6 weeks till the college season starts. We'll probably hit 2 weight classes a week, and then the team race, and then we'll make our guaranteed to be wrong predictions. Probably need to go back and look at the ones we made last year and see how close we were to being right. So it is fun to have us all back on the pod together. I really enjoy it. And we may have news. We may be working on something else that might be coming around the corner in October, November. And if it is, it's something we want you guys to be a part of and help us push to a massive level. So we got to run it by the Godfather and then get it out there. So for Mark and Grant, I'm David. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. See you all next week.